You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of the, I think, current Australian release, The Nest, which has been bubbling around for a long time now. Will it be in award season contention? It could actually. I think it might be. Sean Durkin he's only done 2 films. It seems a lot of his career so far has been on television. But he doesn't seem to have made much because he did marry Marth Marcy May Marlene in 2011. Now, that was a really interesting film, and Elizabeth Olsen starred in it. And back then, Elizabeth Olsen was incredible in these indie films. And I've said on this show a lot, I get really annoyed when these really great indie actresses come up and get hoovered up by franchise movies. And how many films would Jennifer Lawrence have made if you took out 4 Hunger Games movies, 5 X-Men movies? They seem to get sucked into this world, and it's the same with Elizabeth Olsen now. She's got sucked into the Marvel world. But it was an incredible film about a girl escaping from a cult and suffering from mental health problems and delusions. But his new film, The Nest, it's been bubbling around for about a year or so. It features Jude and an actress I've seen, and she's been in lots of films, lots of really big films, Carrie Coon. But I just can't quite pick who she is. It starts with Jude Law in New York, and they're basically Carrie Coon's character trains horses for a living. There are a couple that have ideas above their station. They've got 2 children, a teenage boy and a slightly older teenage goth chick girl, and it's at the start of the 1980s. And Jude Law's been this. He came from London as a hedge fund guy, as a supremo stockbroker at the start of the 80s. And he's moved to America and he's moved to New York, and it's just never happened for him there. It's never really taken off. The family have moved around a bit and are a bit sick of it. And he basically says that his old boss in London, who is played by quite a famous actor, who's not in here, unfortunately, but he's, I'll just look his name because he is Michael Culkin, who's been in loads of things, has called him back to London to become a new stock wonder. And now you get the feeling of edge in their relationship from the off, and you can't quite put your finger on it. One telling moment is when he tells her that he's been begged to go back to London. At a party, it kind of comes out that the reverse was true. And it's never spoken about. But you see on her face, she kind of understands that her husband's a bit of a liar. And a bit of his shit as well. Now, he is one of these he's basically Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. He is a bull artist of a magnitude rarely ever seen. He puts on a very good front. He's a salesman. He's a ScoMo. He puts on such a good front. Everyone loves him. He's so charming, but he's got no substance really to back it up. And he moves their family to somewhere in England where the Queen might actually live. It is a ridiculously grand manor with her stables for his wife's horse to live in, and they live like landed gentry, and it is an amazing house. The kids hate it because it's terrifying. I wouldn't walk around it at night. Those long corridors with ghosts floating around in them. And you get the feeling that he's living beyond his means, and he is massively. And he's one of these people that keeps talking about millions of dollars coming in, but then asks to borrow a few $100s from his wife because he doesn't really have any. He just spends money that he hasn't yet got. And this is a systemic disease. It's a problem of his life. And as the movie progresses, we sort of look back into his past. He come from very working class London stock and had a very fractured relationship with his parents, to the extent where we see his mum. And his mum has never met one of his children's, I think, 16. And that's how long the gap is between him seeing his mum now. And it's sort of alluded to that he's, always put on the front to try and distance himself from his past. The longer the movie goes on, the more desperate this scenario becomes. He puts all of his eggs in one basket and bets massively on this huge deal. His boss isn't so taken with him outside of his personality and actually looks at the fine print of deals. But it's too late for Jude, who is gradually falling into financial quicksand and emotional quicksand with his wife and his kids, who start suffering more and more. And it's a psychological thriller. So we get these people in this country manor pretending to be billionaires, stockbrokers, family, but gradually everything falls apart, and it falls apart quite painfully and badly and psychologically as well. This is a really interesting film. I've seen other films like it. I mean, it reminded me a bit of the one with Richard Gere, which itself was a little bit like Uncut Gems, where his life is falling apart. But he was a brilliant man in that film who'd made a mistake. And it wasn't really his fault, anything that happened afterwards, but it just compounded and compounded. Here we've got a guy that is a con artist. He's not got the substance or the brains to carry off either the life he lives or the persona he projects. And he's found out. And it seems to be that maybe he was found out a long time ago as well. And that he's been begging to come back. The relationship is central between Carrie and Jude Law, and their relationship, which clearly blossoms when he moves back to London, giving you an indication that things were not good, and then falls very fractiously apart as all of the wheels come off. Now, it's a still film for the probably 2/3 of its running time, and very intense emotionally and psychologically. There's a very sort of big metaphor about her horse and what happens to her horse. It is kind of Jude in a way, and just the builders start not turning up because they've not been paid, and the kids start suffering psychologically as well. He sent them to these really posh schools for no reason. It's like he is the truer definition of a narcissist than what people think. Somebody that is desperately afraid of what everyone thinks of them, and that's the only thing they care about. So he projects he doesn't need to project anything like the front he does, but it is his downfall. But the thing that really lifts this film is the final third. It could have been still all the way through and been quite bleak and morose, but the final third, and this is why I've got so much respect for Sean, I've lost his name, Sean Durkin, because he explodes the movie in the final third. Everyone goes manically crazy as things just spiral hopelessly out of control. The soundtrack is absolutely wonderful, pounding tracks by The Cure and New Order through this stage. Both of the teenage girl loses it, the mum loses it incredibly, and she's dancing around to, I think, Bronski Beat in some dive bar in Soho. Jude Law has this incredibly intense discussion where he finally, with a cab driver who's driving him home 20 miles to the ranch, and he has this really sort of breakdown where he actually admits everything. And the cab driver's quite good to him at first, and then basically like, get out, you haven't got any money, have you? But I thought that really showed a lot of control from Sean Durkin. I thought he balanced everything really well. He did a lot of the silent stuff where each of the partners is sort of looking at each other, and where words aren't analysed, but what's spoken has a deeper meaning, and you can see it in the faces of the couple. The relationship between Jude Law and Carrie Coons is magnificent, very intense, passionately so, and they all bring their own flaws to the table. And the denouement, like that final third, is amazing. I thought it really was good. And the denouement itself, I thought I enjoyed it. It didn't leave me feeling down. I felt hopeful at the end. So I think it's really worth seeing. Don't be put off by it thinking it's too dark. But then don't expect something like Knives Out, where it's, almost cartoon levels of enjoyment and entertainment. It's a stark film for a lot of its runtime, a very still one, and very still waters running very deep before it explodes. So it's a very serious film, but it's not without a great deal of fun in the final third, even though it's not fun for the people. So I'm going to give The Nest an 8.5 out of 10. First really good new movie of the year, I think. So 8.5 out of 10 for The Nest.